Okay, let's go ahead and put our Minecraft type block inside of the Unreal Engine, and we're going to use the same project that we did from before, this third person game. So I'm going to go ahead and double click my project and then load that thing up. And here's the project here. So basically, because we did a lot of work with lighting and everything else like that, and setting things up the way that we want, I think it's a good place to kind of show off our work. The only thing is, let's go ahead and save a new level for ourselves. So we can open up our cube level that we had from before and say File, Save As. And let's just call this Minecraft cube level. Like that, and hit save, and now we can start doing things to this this level and not worry about some of the cubes and everything else that we made. So let's go ahead and select these and get rid of them. It's going to hold down Shift and select them all, hit delete, and I'll say delete yes to all. So basically we've got our kind of level that we've got going on here. So here's our proxy object, here's our cubes. Let's just make a new folder, just so we're in the habit of doing this stuff, and then we'll call this Minecraft-ish cubes. And again, I want to set up a little folder structure for myself. Right click and make a new folder and call this meshes. I know I'm going to need that. And I'm going to right click and say new folder, and I'll call this materials. Okay, so we've already got some materials made, so why recreate that whole thing? Why not go ahead and steal some of the work that we did from before? So we're going to click this material, and we're going to go into this Minecraft-ish cubes area, and then drag the material here, like this. And it's going to ask you, do you want to move it or copy it? Let's make a copy of it. So we've got a copy of the material. And now let's rename this. I didn't mean to open it. Let's just click in here for the name and call this Minecraft-ish cube base. Okay, so now we got a material for this. Now we need our mesh that we had, and let's go ahead and import that in. So let's go to the mesh folder, right click and say import to game. Let's do that, and then we need to basically find our area for this. So let me navigate. Okay, I'm going to go into my tools and resources area, go to FBX, and then here's my Minecraft block that we have. I'm going to import all. I'm not going to import the materials or textures. Remember, if we would have embedded the media, we could have actually imported that in, but I just left that out. So let's go ahead and import that, double click on it, and take a look at this cube here. Now, if you want to see collision geometry, it's probably going to make some automatic collision geo for you. And there it is. So it's actually got that on there. So let's turn that off. Let's just go ahead and hit save. But remember, we can actually take this box and actually fill it with our material. So we'll select the material and we'll click here. We'll fill it. We'll just save that, just like that. And now we can take this mesh and we can click and drag it out into the world here. Let's tap F and take a look and see what we've got going on here. And I'm just going to run around in the game real quick. And I want to see what the size of this, how it feels next to my character. And so we've made a 10 by 10, so that's like really, really small. Let's just go ahead and give this a scale. So if I click this, it'll lock all these together and scale these proportionally. So maybe do 10. Let's see how this feels now if we kind of walk up to this cube. And that's a pretty decent size for that. We'll try that out. Okay, so I'm just going to actually take this floor and I'm going to replace it. So let's put this at 0, 0, 0. And I'll hold down Alt and click and drag out a copy of this. Like this, and then I can hold down Control and add selection to this, and hold down Alt and then click and then drag out like that. Okay, Now I'm going to select all of them, just holding down Control and adding to the selection. Hold down Alt and click and drag out. Hold down Alt and click and drag out. And one more time here like this. And I can select everything except for these here. So I'm just going to hold down Shift and then select up to here. Hold down Alt and then click and drag out. And then I should have a pretty nice looking floor for myself. So let's just play this. And now we replaced that floor that we had with our kind of Minecraft-ish blocks that we got going on. Okay, so let's hit escape for that. All right, the next thing we're gonna do, we need textures. We didn't have textures before, so let's go to our Minecraft-ish cube, the root folder, right click on there and say new folder and call this textures. Like that. And let's import our texture in. So let's go right click in here and say import, and we need to navigate to where our textures sit. So I put mine in my Photoshop folder, keep all the Photoshop files in there, and then within there is a target file, and let's choose the grass dirt that you made. So you'll import that in, double click and you can see it. I'll go ahead and save. Now it looks really blurry, but we can change that to get a different kind of look for our compression. So let's go here to the texture area and drop down this little arrow and make sure that's up here. And filter, we're going to change it from default from texture group to, we're going to try nearest. If we put it on nearest, it's kind of a very similar filter to what you have inside of Photoshop. And let's turn off this sRGB. I think I'm going to leave it on. So I guess that's going to be okay for that. And I'll go ahead and hit save. And then now we got a texture. Let's go to our materials and double click on our Minecraft-ish cube and zoom in on this a little bit. I'm going to rotate this just by holding down Alt and clicking and dragging, middle mouse drag to reposition it. And we need our texture. So I'm just going to click and drag it into this area right here like that. So now instead of this base color being this parameter that we have, we can select that and get rid of it. And we can take our color, our RGB from here and run it out from that to base color. And you should see that show up here like that. Now this is the default cube, and you can change these things out with spheres and planes and things like that. If you want your own model in there that we've got, let's go to the meshes area, select this model, and then click this teapot. And now we can see our actual texture on our model like this at that point. So one thing we could do, we set up those parameters so we could change specularity and things like that on the model. What we could do is we could try this out. Let's see with our specularity. Let's do a multiply. So if you hold down M and click, you can get a multiply, or right click and start typing multiply to get it, either one. Let's run our color out from this into the A slot, and then let's put our specular parameter that we have into slot B, and then let's pipe that into specular and see what happens. And what I'm hoping is, and this is happening, see we're getting some breakup in the specularity at that point. So that might work. It looks just kind of cool. So basically we're limiting where specularity can kind of fall. And basically if we right click on there and say start previewing node, we can see what this thing would look like. Now it's color. We could pipe out the red channel if we don't want the red, green, and blue, and you can see now that we're using the red channel of this texture as like a mask. And you could use the green channel, so you could cycle through these and see which one looks correct for you. We've got that. And we're not going to use the alpha. I think the red worked pretty good. So I can stop previewing this like that. And it looks like we've got a problem with one of our sides here. At least I do. So I've got one of these things upside down. So I can go ahead and fix that inside of I won't do that. I would just go ahead and flip that in the UV editor. We looked last section how to update the art. So you know how to update the art. I'm just now noticing that. It's going to bug me. So we can go ahead and hit save for this, for the material. And again, if we wanted to update in real time some of the changes we might want to do to this material, since we got the parameters set up, we can make a material instance of it. So I'm going to push this over here, go to the materials, and I'll just right click and say create material instance, and just like that we can double click this and we can start to again play around with some of these different values and things like that and hit save. So I'm going to right click in there and say save. The only other thing that you can do that I didn't show you is if we double click and go back to the material, is on our texture we can convert this to a texture object. Actually, let's hit undo. Let's convert that to a parameter, and that will allow you to actually swap out your texture with a different texture in the material instance. So if I hit save for that, let's take a look at what this looks like. I know it does some funky stuff to this thing here where it makes this really large, but it's just, you can rename this if you wanted to. Texture sample, I can get rid of this material expression thing, just like that, and save it. And let's take a look over at the material instance and what that says. So see how we can make this a parameter, and anytime you build in bring in a new texture, you can actually take the texture, select it like this, and then just go to this thing here, this little arrow, and you can feed it in there. So it's an easy way of swapping out textures on a material instance. So that comes in handy too. So I'm going to go to the mesh, and I'm going to plug in this little teapot thing. So we are looking at our model this way, like this, and then hold down L and then move my light source around, kind of like that. So again, if we wanted to mess around with any of the parameters, so right now we've got some specularity on there, and if I wanted to even take that and drop that down a little bit, we could do that. Something I'll do like 0.25 and save that. So there, you're able to kind of update some of those things, and you can see our materials already on there and updated. Now if I want these to have the material instance on there, let's go back to our meshes, load this thing up, and remember we filled it with this material here, which was not the material instance, it was the parent material. So if we select this one here and then feed it right in here to this, we're all good for that. And now all those objects will actually have the material instance on there. So if we go here and start to play around with some of these things, maybe I don't want this blue, maybe I want it kind of like this reddish kind of color, or maybe orange would feel a little better. We've got that, hit OK for that. And then now we can start to kind of play around with, maybe we want to move some of these up like that. And let's see how our character reacts to some of this. So I'm going to go ahead and play and move around. And you can see that because we've got the collision that was on there, the character can actually step up on that. Now if you make it too high, the character can't step up. So let's just say we raise this up like this, and we'll have to see what's the actual height that you can't. And we're getting some cracks in there like this because remember we put a bevel on there, which is fine. But you know, if you don't want to see the cracks, you could lower that thing down just a little bit. And we do have our grid snapping set to 10, and you could lower that if you want. It's completely up to you. So if I hit play on this, let's see if this is pretty high. Yep, so I'm not going to be able to step up on that, but I could step up on these areas here. So now you've got a scenario where you've got your own custom kind of Minecraft block. You know how to build the textures. You know how to make a material instance for yourself and even swap out the textures for this. So it'd be kind of cool to see you be creative with these things and build out a little space. Okay, spending a little bit of time on this map, I wanted to show you some of the different changes that I made. So I made 3 different types of blocks. One is a water, and one is the ground that you've already seen, and then this one over here is more of this kind of rocky material. So I'm going to go ahead and load up Photoshop so I can show you some of the different textures. So here's kind of what the water ended up looking like and the different cliffs, and here's what the grass kind of looks like in through there. And so in UE4 just made different material instances. So this is the base one, this is the grass that we have here, here's the one for the water, and then one for the cliffs. And again, we've already looked at how we can change or manipulate these different values on here. One change that I did to add a little bit of motion to the water, if I get in kind of close here like this, you can see that the water is kind of moving up and down just a little bit, and I actually did that within the shader. I wanted to show you that real quick. So in the base shader, here's some of the things that I added to this here. So if I zoom out a little bit, there's this thing called world position offset, and here's what I fed into that. Really the only thing I need is a time node and a sign node, and you can just right click and find those. And if I plug those in directly into the world position offset, that would give me some motion. But basically I wanted to give some parameters for that so I could change that in the material, because again, I'm using a master material. I don't want the ground to move, I just wanted the water to move. So I put in this thing where I took time and I multiplied it with an amount. So this is the time amount, so that's just how fast it'll move up and down, or if it'll kind of go slowly. So this value of 0.1 gives you that time amount, and then that gets fed into the sign node. And then I put this thing called sign amount. So on here, if I give it a value of 0, it's not going to move at all. But if I give it a value of 1, it's going to move whatever some of these values are in here. I did have the sign period set to 1, so that's all you need for that. But if I put this value up pretty high, like 20, it'll do a really large movement in there. I actually didn't need this masking node. I was trying to see if I could just make it move up and down. So we've got X, Y, and Z. I was trying to see if I could do that. Didn't really need that. So let me go ahead and get rid of that. So that's basically the shader that I made for this. And you can see after this saves, I'll show you the material instances for this. So on the material instances that I made, we don't want any kind of amount for this sign amount here like that. So I'll go ahead and hit save for that, and that makes sure that these don't move. I don't want any kind of movement on these pieces here either for the cliff. But for the water, you can see I've taken the sign amount and I gave it a value of 3, and this time amount is set to 0.1. And so if we take a look at it, it should be moving ever so slightly on there. Let's go ahead and let me find that and just reload it like that, and then I'll hit save. I don't know if this is set to real time, so that's why it's not moving. I can, in the material instance, I can see this running in real time if I have that turned on. So again, that just if I have real time turned on here, I can see it in the viewport. But then now if I play and I go into the game and kind of run around a little bit, you can see some of that effect. Now what's kind of interesting about this this offset is you can see it coming up through his feet. It's just a visual effect, so it doesn't change any of the collision, and the collision doesn't update. It's just a visual kind of thing. So it's just something you can kind of play around with, and I put some different holes for water in here. But I was trying to lay this space out in a way that you could take the character, and in most places you could kind of run around and through here like this. And if you needed to, you could kind of jump up on there. So I was just trying to make something kind of interesting. So the next thing I'm going to load up for you is some different examples that I found on Sketchfab. And these are some different examples of what you might be able to do with some of the pieces that you're working with. So kind of a cool tool online is Sketchfab, and a user actually loaded up this kind of voxel model. I do believe there's a tool out there where you can create voxel art, but it's basically kind of showing you with these different blocks, which you would be able to swap them out with yours and actually put a small amount of texture on there. You can build a space out that looks pretty cool and pretty convincing pretty quickly with things. So I just thought this was kind of interesting, and again, I thought this would be kind of neat for you to take a look at and get a little bit of inspiration for maybe what you might want to try to build. And there's another option on here for this one. I thought this one was kind of neat looking as well. So again, just with a few different blocks and rearranging those blocks in interesting ways, I think you can build a pretty cool and interesting space.